Mabuhay! Celebrating the year of Oblate Vocations. We would like to hear the vocation story of our very own Father Irvin Morastil OMI, the Director of Oblate Youth Philippines. I am Julius Espargaza, Oblate Youth Philippines Secretary. Further with us, the Oblate Youth of Archdiocese Juan of Senior Santo Niño, Isabel.
Hi, I'm Kennard. I'm Benji.
Hello, I'm Ariel.
Hi, I'm Eva May.
And I'm Eugene. I'm Kenj.
I am Donna.
Father, paano mo nabalaan niya may anak kang bukasyon sa pagkapari? Meron ba mga signs na nagawas or anything ikaw is imuang bukasyon is pagkapari build?
Well, I don't think that there was any extraordinary revelations when it comes to my vocation story. Kasi I always believe that everything is part of the process, the circumstances, when you were born. But what was clear to me is it was when I was in grade 8 when I was able to realize that I am called to religious life.
Paano ito nagsimula, Father? Ang pamilya mo ba ay religious or na-expose ka ba sa mga pari or mga religyoso sa inyong lugar?
Actually, the contrary is true, no? I grew up in a far-flung village in our place there. This is our humble home, our simple home. Most of my growing up years, since primary and elementary years, I spent it here. Stayed here, I grew up here, so this is how it looks. When we only see a priest every once a year during the patronal fiesta of our chapel, Our Lady of Remedies. But I think what made it grow when it comes to my faith life and vocation life is in our house there is this comics, gospel, and Bible. I'm a visual person. I enjoy looking at pictures. So at home, I always enjoy reading this comics, gospel, and Bible, which illustrates the story from Genesis up to Revelation. That's why at a young age, I'm very familiar with these stories because I was following and reading those comics, gospel, and Bible.
Pads, paano nagdagal ang faith o ng pagsabot mo sa scriptures?
Well, first and foremost, I'm not very particular with the Bible itself, but I'm particular with the story according to the illustrations provided in the comics Bible. But my faith really grew. My knowledge of basic foundation of our faith is brought about by our catechist, no, na although I had my elementary education in a public school, pero our catechists were very religious and very dedicated and committed to go to the school. That during noontime after lunch, they would enter our classroom and teach us some catechetical songs, introduce us some few verses of the Gospels and of the Bible. And it was there when I get too interested about lessons of our faith, lessons about the scriptures and songs, religious songs, praise and worship, things like that. And I enjoy it. I always look forward into it whenever it is scheduled to come.
Fads, ano naman ang reaksyon ng magulang mo nung nalaman nila na gusto mong pumasok sa seminary?
Akong feeling na may anak kong pari. Nalipay, jud ko. Kaya yun naman. Sa gamay pa rin akong anak. Murag naisipan na jud ako ni nga murag magsulod sa seminary ba kay handong na siya mag-eskwela sa Salaman Institute sa Notre Dame. Sa Notre Dame Salaman. Mga na to nga matag-eskwela niya atong simbahan. Pag ginaisip ko na ako nga murag diha jud ang iyang kuan ba. Murag diha jud nga gitawag ko siya sa Ginoo nga diha jud siya makaabot nga maging pari.
Pero proud gid ko may anak ko pare. Sa kanan ka daw nakajakkat kay. Happy good. Kay ako talagsaon na kung ginikanan po mga anak ko pare. Sa mong kaliwat. Moro gina isa. Mga Diyos nun ko pa na mga kaliwat ko. Lipay ko. Gihatag na ko na sa Ginoo. Basta yan gusto. Lipay ko. Di man babag ng may mong anak mo pare nga kwan dili mas malipay ta nga na kay natay anak nga nang pare.
Malaki ang role at contribution ng aking family at ng aking parents, no? Tulad nun, kahit na hindi ako lumaki at exposed sa mga pare at mga madre, pero my faith basically was brought about and introduced by my own parents at home, no? Si mama at papa ko ay very supportive of my decision. In fact, hindi ako naghirap na magpaalam. Parang ang dating pa nga sa akin is they are actually anticipating it and expecting it na after high school I would be entering the seminary.
Father, you mentioned earlier that you became aware of such vocation when you are in grade 8. Paz, can you share us more about this story of yours?
Actually, I had my high school in a Catholic institution already, Notre Dame Salaman College. The school was started by Father Pablo Garcia, an Oblate, and a former parish priest of that place. And since then, it has been turned over to the Marist Fathers, and then finally to the religious of the Virgin Mary Sisters, for quite some time administered the school. So one time when I was in grade 8, I was just quietly seated under a talisay tree. I remember it very well. When a very serious question just struck my mind, and I said, what do I want to become when I grow up? And then the answer as well was very quick. I wanted to be a priest. And then what kind of priest? Although at the time I never realized it should be an oblate or diocesan or what. I just said I wanted to be an OMI because everywhere in our school buildings, like our main building there, the name of Archbishop Gerard Monjo, OMIDD building. Our library is named after Archbishop Philip Smith, OMIDD building. The chapel is named after Pablo Garcia, OMI chapel. So I said, well, I wanted to be just like them. I think it's simple as that.
Ano din yung mga struggles na naharap mo nung pag-discern mo sa vocation mo?
Struggles. Well, number one is the issue of poverty because, my parents are just poor. As you see in the video, we just live in the farm, we just have a simple life. My parents had no regular income, as we may say. So it's a consideration that as an eldest, it seems that in the Philippines, we are in a way obliged to help our family, our brothers and sisters. So that's one of the most difficult thing to consider in entering. But at the same time, something is telling my mind that, the Lord will always provide for those whom He calls. And I always believe in that. I had that conviction that the Lord provides for whatever my family would need, even if I become a priest.
Pag na-feel mo na vocation, tuloy-tuloy yan siya sa imo self nga ma-feel mo nga ang karisent sa pagka-priest.
In fact, in my experience, after high school, I was at the height of my desire to become a priest. In fact, when I was still in grade 10, I would love to wear an oblate habit, things like that. I would take out the crucifix from our classroom's wall and then design a blank cincture and then wear our cassock because I was as well an altar server in the school. Because I was so excited to be an OMI, to appear like an OMI. There was a time when the school celebrated Teachers' Day, Personals Day, when all our teachers and administrators would have to celebrate in a particular place, and we student leaders had to, in a way, dress like our teachers. Now, since I cannot dress as an RVM sister, who was then our directress, I prefer to dress myself as an Oblate because at the time, I was the student advisory council president. So automatically, I will be the director of the school in place of the RVM sister who are celebrating there in one of the buildings in our school. So that's how excited I was. But when I was already in the seminary, during my 4th year, I was finishing my philosophy. It was then when things started to somehow fade when it comes to enthusiasm. I get confused. I don't see anymore the relevance of my vocation, so I don't see the point of continuing. So I decided to leave the seminary for a while after my philosophy.
Anong nangyari, Father? Bakit ka umalis sa seminary?
Well, at some point, I believe we who are called by God has to be purified. No? We need to be purified in terms of our motivation, in terms of our desire. Because I think I started my seminary life with so much confidence on myself that it is what I want, it is what I desire, this is what I want to spend my life with. But you know, at the end of the day, you have to realize that everything is determined by God, that it is God's will that we need to obey. So I reached that point in my life when everything is truly beyond my control. Even my own emotions, I cannot manage it and control it. Some issues in my personal life, like search and quest for meaning, my self-esteem seems to have been affected, my problem with self-confidence, things like that. So I think it's more of submitting myself to the will of God and not so much on my own personal capacity and capability.
Anong nangyari, Father, pagkatapos mo umalis sa seminary?
Well, I decided to apply as a teacher to Notre Dame of Salapan College, the secondary school where I had my secondary education as well. And I was well received by my teachers there. So I was teaching grade 7, was my advisory class. And during the day I was teaching secondary students, I was teaching religion as well for grade 10. And then in the evening, I would be teaching college students for philosophy of man, ethics, and philosophy of religion, things like that. That includes Saturday because I'm also teaching during Saturday time. So I was teaching for almost 2 years.
Pats, all throughout sa labas ka na seminary, naisipan ko ba bumalik pa sa seminary ulit?
Well, that was the most challenging and most difficult part of my life, I think. When it comes to discernment, when it comes to life experience, it was very hard. Because for the first time, it was then when I was able to experience the difficulty of finding a job, looking for work. Something which I did not experience before, after my graduation, because as soon as my teachers and administrators knew that I was leaving the seminary, I was immediately assured of employment at the school because they said, since you are leaving the seminary, so we want you here to teach here and look after the campus ministry and everything. So in a way, I really did not struggle when it comes to looking for a job. So this time, after I resigned from school, it was then when I experienced how difficult it was. I went to different agencies to apply for work. I was not lucky. So I moved from one place to another until I don't have any money anymore to spend, and I started to worry about my future, about my family, about myself. Well, my relatives would in a way help me, but still, that sense of insecurity on my part was terrible. Until such a time when I said to myself, maybe God is calling me back to the seminary. But I was resisting that idea because I said, no, that part of my life is enough. Seminary life is, I'm done with it. So there is no point of coming back. It's about time to face a new stage of my life, a new chapter of my life. So even with prayer, I was not praying. I was afraid to pray because I'm afraid that God will tell me, I want you to be back to the seminary. So I was resisting.
Ano ang naudyok, Father, na bumalik ka sa seminary?
Well, I would say with all humility, it's out of no choice because much as I wanted to really work abroad, to really find a job, I only rely on newspaper advertisements. No? So every now and then, I would look at the newspapers to look for any possibility of having a job, of having a work, and then I'll apply. And still, I cannot find it. Until one time, I went to church, because I said I need to pray because I'm really at a loss. So I need to beg God to help me and save my future. But unfortunately, when I read the newspaper, I saw there the same advertisement that encouraged me before, that if you say yes, ads of the Oblates, it says you cannot marry, but your life will be filled with love. You cannot keep wealth, but your treasures will be immeasurable. You cannot have your own time, but you will be fulfilled. Things like that. So I said to the Lord, my God, this is not the job I need. This is not the job I want. But sensing that the Lord is in a way trying to invite me to reconsider coming back to the seminary, I tried to renegotiate and said, okay, I'll come back to the seminary, but just give me a year or two. After that, I'll return. Unfortunately, same things happened. I went out to apply, nothing happened. Until finally, it seems that I realized it's difficult to wrestle with God. I can fight it out, but I will always be at the losing end. So that was then when I realized I need to submit myself back to God, reconsider His plan, obey His will. So that's where everything started. I decided to return to the seminary.
How long have you been an Oblate father?
Well, thanks be to God, since I decided to return the seminary in 2002, it seems that by divine providence, everything has been restored. All my initial enthusiasm when I was in secondary school, all my desire to become a priest, to be an oblate, everything has been completely restored. And since then, it seems that God has been very consistent with my life. So I professed my first vows in 2004. So that means I'm already, how many a priest now, if we do the math? 2004, 2017. No. And then a priest, I was ordained in November 12, 2009. So this coming November 12, 2017, I'll be 8-year a priest. And still counting by divine grace and providence, and I'm very grateful and happy, especially working with young people. It also makes me feel young at some point. I'm very happy and grateful with my oblate life.
Any regrets, Pads?
Well, I have none when it comes to my decision of being an oblate, being a religious, being a priest. There are some regrets when it comes to my personal life, like some wrong decisions and actions that I did. But still, life is a matter of a continuous process of growing up with God. That when we realize we're committing mistakes because of wrong decisions and actions, then we try to correct them. And then most of all, in our struggles to become holy, we submit to the grace and power of God, because it is only with God that we can achieve perfection and holiness.